Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. We talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, right here on youtube.com/Rogue Matter and facebook.com/Rogue Matter podcasts. Tonight, we have an amazing show. We have a guest in studio. We have Darren Sanchez.
How you guys?
He's a frequent guest and collaborator, so it's exciting to have him aboard. And as always, we have the Lord of the live stream himself, the Lord of the radio. See, where did I get that wrong? Mr. Hassan Godwin, how you doing, sir? Oh, I love it.
I feel like, you know what? I'm having issues here because for some reason I really feel like we've done this already.
Wow. We've got a chance to do it better. That's the best part.
Hassan, that's the most chipper greeting.
We're doing the dance one more time. It's all good. No, we're excited here. We've got a lot of great content with which we can now discuss. We've got a Rogue File later. We're going to be doing a George Perez Rogue File. George Perez obviously gave the sad news last week that he has a terminal illness. And so we want to look back on his career, but in the most positive of ways possible. So we're gonna definitely dive in and do that, and we're gonna do a new segment called "Whose Side Are You On Anyway?" Gonna do the good old the Big Two versus work for hire debate, because that seemed to come up at C2E2. It's my first C2E2 I have not been to in about, I want to say, 11 years.
Wow.
Yeah, actually, I went through and I was thinking all the way back to 2011. I think is the last time I didn't attend a C2E2.
You must know every restaurant and bar in Rosemont, Illinois.
Oh no, it's not Rosemont, baby.
It's not Rosemont.
This is this is the.
They move it?
No, it's C2E2. It's in McCormick Place,
Okay.
downtown Chicago. You're thinking of the now defunct Wizard World Chicago, which. Not as defunct
right
anymore.
right.
Now
No.
it's Fan Expo Chicago, so lots of excitement there. But yeah, actually, I think I gotta be honest. I think I've been to every C2E2 even prior to that. I think I might have missed 2011, but that's about it. I can't think of another one that I didn't go to. So sad it was there, but obviously we'll get into some debate. But first, we're gonna start out. We had a little TV show on that supposedly was gonna break the internet. And that was Hawkeye. Now, we're going to do this as spoiler-free as humanly possible. Because, I'm hoping at this point people have seen it, but at the same time, if you haven't, I don't want you to tune out. So we're gonna hide the big reveal that was toward the end of the show, where a major Marvel iconic character was introduced, and we'll leave it at that, and we'll try to dance around the fact that the rumor mill for this was kind of brewing for a while, right? And so people were talking about this. I think, Hassan, you and I had mentioned, I saw an article last week, one of the producers was saying, this episode is going to break the internet. I don't know if it did or not. I don't know if the internet is still is more concerned with Spider-Man No Way Home because of the reviews that have been out and released, but it was definitely something that was of interest for folks. Was it?
Right, a good thing, or nobody be listening to us right now.
As long as we're recording, I'll put it out after. We're in good shape here. The internet's doing okay. All right, well that's good to know. That's good to know. Even though that would actually probably make civilization better.
Yes.
Like, wouldn't it actually be better?
The less I say about that, the better.
Yeah, the internet. If the internet was no more, I think we'd be. I think the world, just in general. Well, that's good.
I'm loyal to the overlord internet.
Well,
Okay.
Even better, right?
As long as anyone's asking and I'm saying things on the air, I'm loyal.
Well,
Behind the scenes, when we're off the internet, I've got other things to say about it, most likely.
all right. Well, I appreciate that. So I guess the first thing to kind of discuss is Darren, are you actually enjoying Hawkeye?
Yeah,
Not even actually. Just are you enjoying?
Yeah, I'm enjoying Hawkeye. I think the banter is very it's kind of Buffy-like. It's fun. It's lighthearted. Not a lot of substance. The villains are kind of thin and not really dangerous. It's Marvel light, basically. Sort of as I've heard people describe it as Home Alone.
That was me.
You know,
I
was that
described it.
you?
I described
Well,
it.
you
as
are
Home Alone.
people, so-
I got yelled at. I got yelled at for describing it as
But
Home Alone.
the first episode felt very Christmassy. It felt very Home Alone. The villains, what are they called? The tracksuit mafia. Very much like the Wet Bandits in that they're kind of ineffectual and not dangerous really at all. So yeah, I feel like it's kind of just, I don't know, it's Marvel light.
Marvel Light. It's funny. I had said last week that I am enjoying Hawkeye more as the episodes went along. The first 2 episodes set it up as Die Hard. The trailer set it up as Die Hard. The first 2 episodes was more like Home Alone. But then the introduction of Echo, and then kind of even last week, which is not a spoiler. I mean, at this point, you should catch up to at least last week's episode.
Sure.
Where Yelena, Romanoff, Natasha's sister, comes into play. So at least I feel like it's escalated and it's gotten to a point where in episode 5 where we're actually, the stakes have gotten higher, but initially I was not impressed. Hassan, to this point, are you enjoying Hawkeye?
Yeah, I am. I'm liking it.
You liking what you say?
Yeah, so far.
All right.
Well said.
Well said. Now, are the villains doing it for you?
The villains never. I mean, Marvel villains aren't really that good. They're incidental. They're divisive. Narratively, they're narrative pieces that get in the way of whatever the hero is trying to accomplish. In this particular case, I suppose the goal is to get home and to not be, to be back with his family by Christmas. It was so far.
So hang on 1 second. I'm going to interrupt you for 2 seconds, only because I don't think your audio is actually coming out. as I realize this, and my mom just texted and said your audio is not coming out. So I'm gonna let you do this all over again. It's very exciting. It's nothing. This is what I enjoy the most.
So half our audience is complaining right now.
Yeah. That's exactly what's happening right now. Yeah, there we go. Now we can hear you. I'm sure we can hear you now.
I don't know. Can
Yes,
we
we
make
can
sure?
hear you now. Yes, you're back, and life is good. Life is good. Okay, are you enjoying Hawkeye? What's your take on that?
I enjoy it. It's doing really well for me. It's working.
Is the level of villainy up to your
As
standards?
I was saying before, the villains, the MCU villains aren't really, amazing villains by any stretch of the imagination. They seem to be just obstacles to try to keep the main character, the hero, or the protagonist from doing whatever they want to do. In this particular case, it seems like it's trying to keep Clint from getting home for Christmas. So, as it pertains to that, they're pretty much fulfilling their goal.
So it's like
stopping
planes,
him
trains, and
from-
automobiles, basically. he's trying to get home for Thanksgiving, except he's trying to get home for Christmas.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's working for me so far. As to what it is.
So, in this kind of like run up to this episode, it's the last episode too, or second to last
Right,
episode.
there's one more.
It's really kind of crazy, right? In this run up, I kind of had this thought though. Are people actually, and the reason that's why I asked you guys, are you actually enjoying the series, the actual story itself? I feel like a lot of people are excited about these MCU shows not because of the actual show itself. Like, I don't know if there's anything about the show itself that's getting people excited, the story itself that's going on, or they're just excited because it's going to introduce a new character, or it's going to give us like the next thing that's happening. And this big reveal at the end, which we won't say what it is one of those game-changing introductions in that it once again expands the Marvel Universe and it brings in a whole set of characters that the fans have kind of been wanting to come in.
You guys remember WandaVision? How they ended with a game-changing cameo of Quicksilver, and how it was supposed to change everything going forward and introduce a whole new group of Marvel characters. But they just kind of teased it, and then they didn't do shit about it. So I think we have to take this with a grain of salt, because we don't know how they're going to execute it, and just sit back and see what's going to happen. Because last time it was a little bit of a bait and switch, and they're being cute and clever, and so hopefully it's not the same thing this time.
Well, I think it's pretty clear if you've seen the episode. It's definitely not the same thing. They definitely do introduce the character that needs to, kind of be there to merge universes and introduce a whole slate. So basically, I feel like, though, a lot of these people, and maybe the question isn't, are we watching for the wrong reasons? Is Marvel making these shows for the wrong reasons? Is it literally just setting up these future movies? And is anything that happens in these shows really worth the price of admission almost? In this particular case, for me, for Hawkeye, I am enjoying it more than, say, Falcon and Winter Soldier. I'm enjoying it more than Loki, even, because Loki had a lot of just head-scratching moments where I kind of gave up trying to wrap my head around it.
Right.
But I don't know. I almost feel like the internet is just we're like putting up with shows so we can get to that next big thing, versus actually sitting there and enjoying. Is that an agree or disagree statement?
I'll go first. I know Hassan has a opinion on this. I'm sure he does. But I think that these companies are under pressure to put out content. And the content that has to come out, even if it's not the most epic thing, it has to build towards something. And what they're doing is planting seeds for future movies and future shows. Mm-hmm. So they do that. They even do that in the comics right now. But could Hawkeye stand alone? I don't think so. Like I said, I think it's very light on story. It's light on character development. I feel like it's more of a Kate Bishop guest starring Hawkeye instead of Hawkeye guest starring Kate Bishop. So I feel like they're just trying to push forward their big storyline at the expense of Hawkeye, the character, who now is an ineffectual old man who can't hear and has a teenager who's basically almost as good as him. So I don't know. It's just a weird. To me, it's not the greatest show, but it is new content on Disney, and a lot of people are just waiting for that next new thing, whether it's Mandalorian or
mm-hmm.
WandaVision or whatever it is. They're going to watch it to see what it is, and it's FOMO, fear of missing out, and so people want to watch it and see what's going on. Just like Captain Marvel, the movie, how it was sandwiched in between the two biggest movies of all time, mm-hmm. And you were told that you had to kind of watch this so you could keep up with the storyline. People don't want to miss out on something so that they can basically be insiders and know what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's my take.
Hassan, what do you think?
I kind of I agree with that for the most part. But I don't know. I'm just not minding it. I mean, people keep approaching us as though they're being manipulated into something. I don't feel that way. I don't know. I mean, if you're going to ask a question about whether they're doing the shows for the right reasons or the wrong reasons, I don't really understand the line of questioning. Either you like it or you don't. Like I'm not minding it. Like that's not an endorsement. That's not an outright like I love it and this I want more of it. But
Well, yeah. Let's preface this by saying
1 hour out of my week is not an issue for me.
Are they an hour? Are they like 40?
They're not even an hour, but yeah, they're pretty.
Yeah, that's
good.
what I'm saying. Like it's not even. I mean, yeah. I mean, look, if I didn't want to watch it, I wouldn't watch it. So I don't know.
I-
You know, I
if
think
Marvel
that's
shows
okay.
had a history of being standalone shows that did not cross over in any way, people wouldn't really be as
Yeah.
incentivized to watch this Hawkeye show. But I still think people would watch it because it is fun. It's lighthearted. It's not. Hawkeye Ronin was an assassin, killing people, and then suddenly it's like Inspector Gadget, and
Right.
and so it just it doesn't make sense to me brand wise as far as what are they trying to do? Are they trying to make everything less dangerous and Marvel light and
Yeah.
appeal to younger kids? And I don't know. It seems like they missed a lot of opportunity with a strong character.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and I forgot to do this at the beginning, which I feel like I did at one point, but I didn't do it right now. Is preface by saying there's no right or wrong reason to watch something. People are going to watch what they're going to watch, and that's fine. I'm not really indicting anybody in that sense. What I'm looking at it as from a creative standpoint, right? Are people like if I was a creator and I was making these shows, if I was the executive producer, if I was the showrunner, I would want people to be so engrossed in what art I'm creating, the story I'm creating, to the point where, the characters, all this stuff, to the point where where the audience is hanging on what's going to happen in the actual story. Not, I've got to tune in because X character is going to bring about the X-Men universe into my world, and that's what I'm really hoping on. And if it doesn't do that, I'm very upset.
Right.
And I'm going to call this bad. I'm going to call this a bad show.
It should be incidental, like gravy or icing on the cake kind of thing, not the cake itself.
Right. So Hassan, I apologize. I did not preface my right or wrong question with that statement. So when I think about are we watching this for the right reasons? To me, the right reasons are that this show, I like. It's great. I look forward to it, and I can't wait to see it. And the storyline. Boy, I wonder what's going to happen with the storyline. I almost don't even know what the storyline is, if you really think about it, in Hawkeye, in terms of being a compelling story. Now, I'll also say I actually really am enjoying this series, I think, more than some of the previous Marvel series so far. But what's really the story? There's some sort of thing going on with her mom and her fiance, that they have a shell company, but I'm not really sure what that is in terms of, how does that affect Hawkeye? The only thing that Hawkeye, as the titular character, is involved in is just making sure that, Ronin's reputation is.
He's chasing the suit and the sword, and there's a lot of distractions, and there's not one really main plot point, except for is he going to make it home because he promised he'd make it
right.
home.
That's it. That's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Like, think about it too, right? Like, originally he's there because Kate Bishop finds the Ronin outfit, puts it on, and goes about gallivanting in New York City. Right? That's the reason that.
Right, and he knows that she's going to get killed if she keeps doing that. So I got to fix this.
But now, he did fix it, right? So why does he have to continue to be there? Like Kate Bishop, I don't know.
It's.
But that's the question, right? So it's like, okay, now what?
Doesn't
Now
she keep following him though everywhere he goes?
what's that?
Like the last two episodes, isn't that the gimmick that she keeps following him?
Yes.
Right.
Keeps ditching her, and then she keeps following him.
Yes.
And then throughout tonight's episode or today's episode reveals that he's been worried about a larger villain that's lurking behind the scenes, which is why he keeps delaying his return home and keeps investigating. And so she just keeps following him. That's why she's involved as much as she is, right?
Right. He could just go home though, and then she.
But like I said, he's worried about this bigger.
But worried for who?
presence.
I guess that's the question. For his family.
Well, I mean, he's an Avenger, right? So if he's worried about a larger villain on the scene, right? Wouldn't it be his obligation to do something about it?
Sure.
I guess.
So isn't that why he's there?
I don't know. That's I guess my point exactly is I don't know. I don't know necessarily at this point I know he's got some others. I guess there's other Avengers items he's got to get, right? There's some loose stuff that's been, he said something about a watch, which we don't exactly know what that thing does.
Right.
There was a glowy thing, because there's always a glowy thing that's something. I don't know. It's funny. The more I think about it, I don't know why he's still there, aside from what you said. Maybe out of honor or nobility.
Well, like in the process, he's been captured, right? Because people are trying to track down whoever this Ronin character is, and for some reason, there's strong suspicion that he's connected to Ronin, if not being Ronin in and of itself, right? So that's the opening stage. That's like Act 1 of him being kind of caught up in this whirlwind while he was on a mission to do something else and trying to get something done so he could go home. He's caught up in this past deeds, coming back to haunt him, type circumstance. And the Kate Bishop situation is that she's enamored with him because, she watched him pretty much help save the world back during
totally get hers.
Battle of New York.
Yep.
So she's been, I know. So she's chasing him around, and in the process of him trying to either keep her out of trouble or trying to subtly get himself as far away from her as possible, they get up into kind of Three Stooges-esque antics in their attempts to escape, whatever, second tier villain squad is after them in whatever particular episode, right?
Yeah.
And then the stakes slowly get raised with a Black Widow, which happens to be Natasha's sister in this particular situation. And then the stakes get raised again by the end of the episode because it's revealed that he's been hanging out this entire time, worrying that, the trail lines are leading back to a more substantial villain, which turns out to that particular villain, not mentioned, is supposed to be a substantial situation for the MCU in general because it links to different wings of the previous factions of television and movie together.
That was well played there. I like that. That was very well done. I like the
skirting around the.
I like it. No, look, there's an art to that, and you're displaying your artistry on full display tonight. I actually, when you explain it out, I guess it does make sense. But it's just interesting that I'm more about. I am, like I said, I am actually enjoying the series. I don't think he's taking a back seat necessarily to the rest of the characters, where in previous Marvel shows, like Falcon and Winter Soldier, for example, I'll go back to that. I felt like they were the least interesting part of the show, and people like Baron Zemo, people like
John Carter.
Agent Carter, was and the US US agent, and were actually the real stars of it.
Isn't the preconceived notion for most shows or most material at this point, not in the general sense of doing a television show or an action adventure show, but wouldn't the preconceived notion be that you're already interested and that they're giving you just more stimuli involving particular characters that you have an interest with, in the sense of a lot of people are like tuning into these shows and are like, make it worth my while to have tuned into the show.
Yeah.
And then the attitude turns into, well, they're not doing anything to hold my interest, right? But if the knowledge is, or if the logic is, well, you're already watching, right? So we're giving you the show that we promised to give you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're watching something that you're not particular, not you in general, just like royal you, like if you're watching something that you're not particularly interested in, for the notion that there's going to be something momentous happening, and then it doesn't really happen, even though something momentous hasn't really been promised. Is that a right or wrong way to watch it? Doesn't the watcher bear some kind of responsibility and
I agree.
expectation that they are attaching to it? It's it's strange to me. Like, it's like people like this stuff and they're constantly asking, why do we like it? And it's like, maybe just because you like it. Like if you ask me, like, are you liking Hawkeye? Yeah, I like it. It's working. It doesn't seem like it's going nowhere to me. It's not boring me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not hating. I'm not hating the gimmickry, which I'm not denying there is gimmickry in the story. I'm not hating the gimmickry that's going on. So that's why I'm watching it. Like beyond that, if they do something that surprises me, I will count myself amongst the surprised and delighted people. But I don't. And I'm again, this is not me criticizing the question in general, but I don't know what more there should be other than I like it, which is why I'm watching it, right?
Well, it's a cute little story, and there's nothing really to hate about it. But it's a vapid story, and there's nothing really to love about it that, a year from now you're going to be remembering much from this show at all. It's just kind of Haley Steinfeld is fun to watch. She's funny. She's cute. Really, that's the show. It's very vapid in my opinion. It reminds me a little bit of Game of Thrones. How everyone loved the first 5 seasons, but after that it kind of went downhill a little bit. But people watched anyway. They had
say a little more than a little.
well, yes, yeah, but people watched. They wanted to see what was going to happen, if not just to watch the train wreck. And I kind of feel like, some of the Marvel stuff may have been better 5 years ago than it is now, because the stuff they're doing now is after the biggest movies in history, and they're like, okay, what are we going to do now? I don't know. Let's make everybody old, phase them out, and do everything we can to bring in the young Avengers. Doesn't necessarily mean these shows have to be great, but they do have to lead up to young Avengers, because people are going to watch anyway. And that's...
Was that the old George Costanza? It's like, why are we putting this on TV? Why are we watching it? Because it's on TV. Because it's on TV.
Yeah.
Not yet. It's not.
I guess if the logic is that people are going to watch this stuff anyway, then why are we asking why we're watching it? It's weird. It's just
it is.
I think that people. I think people are watching. I think people are annoyed that they feel compelled to watch it.
I think you're right.
They don't know
That's
why.
actually
they
the
don't
best
know why
point.
they.
That is really the best point.
Now, if
And
you read
Hassan,
if you read the first 6 Harry Potter books, but you heard the 7th one was terrible, wouldn't you probably read it anyway? I mean, I feel like, especially if you knew there was going to be an 8th one coming out, it's just one of those things. When you have an interconnected universe, you feel like if you don't know what's going on, then you're out. So you may as well just keep up with it, so that when the next movie comes out, you're up to speed. And it's fairly entertaining. It's fun. It's lighthearted and campy and all that kind of stuff. It's just not hard hitting, like an assassin character should be, in my opinion. Should be more like a Bourne Identity kind of show, where it goes into what Hawkeye is all about.
That's something, too. We talked about this off air, though. It does not go into his origin. It does not give us anything new about the character. We knew he had a family before this.
Oh, in his family. His wife, she seems to be a lot more assertive and also more involved in his activities than they hinted at in the past. It wouldn't surprise me if she turned out to be like Mockingbird or something like that.
Sure.
Because they're leading up to all these different things, and that's really what this is all about, is leading up to it and trying to be clever and all that stuff, when they're not really paying Hawkeye the service that they should, and they kind of missed out on that.
Yeah, I mean,
There is also the simple truth that a lot of these heroes are aging out, just physically.
Tell that to Spider-Man.
Huh?
I said, tell that to Spider-Man. I mean, they don't have to age them out. They want to age them out. So that.
Well, I know. I mean, I mean, Jeremy Renner is aging out. He's getting. I don't know if he's aging to the point where he needs to wear a hearing aid in real life. But I mean, I think these characters are getting older. I think the idea. This is where we get into the weeds of within any corporate entity of like the ever diminishing returns versus like compromised. The overall narrative to extend the life of whatever it is your franchise or your property is.
You're not married to these actors. I think Sean Connery, Roger Moore, Tobey Maguire, they all got old. So but their characters didn't. And I think what they're doing is phasing out these characters so they can bring in the Young Avengers. While Spider-Man maintains his youth, he's in high school now. Hawkeye and Cap got old. While Thor is 3,000 years older, if not more, suddenly he wants to retire, and that doesn't make sense. Someone who's essentially a god should be eternal. He shouldn't, have end-of-life kind of syndrome where he wants to just retire or have a midlife crisis. To me, it's a little weird how they're just kind of discarding all.
I think what Marvel Studios is going through is what all comic book companies eventually go through with their creators. They just run through what they can tell or what they think they can tell.
Yeah.
Until you bring in someone fresh and new, and then you kind of come in and they'll come in with a different perspective. I think in the case of live action versus comic book, I mean, the characters themselves, you're never going to have to worry about them aging out necessarily because they're not real people. To Hassan's point, the actors
after a certain age, they're going to start looking ridiculous.
They're either going to look ridiculous, or the actors themselves are just going to sit there and say, like, Hugh Jackman. I remember, he's like, I don't want to play Wolverine again because I don't want to have to eat chicken for 3 months only eat chicken to get the physical form.
Or look at Daniel Craig in James Bond, like how he was just like, I'm too old to do this. You don't really attribute that to the depictions that they have on screen because they're virile and that but I mean. It is a real consideration.
Yeah,
it's a risk to recast, but when you look at Batman, we're not still forcing. Adam West has passed, but we're not still forcing Michael Keaton to be Batman because we all loved Michael Keaton. Every time there's a new Batman, people complain, but then they eventually embrace him, whether it's Ben Affleck or Christian Bale, and now what Robert Pattinson. I'm not really looking forward to that, but I assume that after I watch it, I'll kind of grow. It'll grow on me, So I think the same would have happened if they recast Hawkeye or any of the characters. I think they're doing it just because they want to. They want more young characters. They want more female characters. They want more inclusive characters. And I think that the older characters are paying the price for that because they're being emasculated in a lot of cases or phased out. And so
one character I want to touch on, though, before we go to break, she deserves her own show, is Florence Pugh.
Oh, she's great.
She is unbelievable.
She'll get her own. She'll get something.
Well, she should. I mean, they should just turn over a franchise to her because when she is on screen, I mean, there is a tension when she's having that standoff with Kate Bishop. I thought that was the best. That was the best single scene I've seen in a Marvel show to this point for me, because you just don't know what she's going to do. She's half, kind of whimsical and half kind of funny, and I'm my math's not going to add up to one, but but at the same time, she is also like you're just waiting for her to do something.
She's still an assassin, and she doesn't know what side of the fence she's on.
Yeah.
So she's a conflicted character, which automatically makes her more interesting.
Yeah.
She's capable of killing somebody, but she's also capable of joking around.
Yeah.
Which plays a little bit better, I think, with the fans, Marvel fans.
Yeah. But she is. I mean, every time she's on screen, I can't help but I'm zoned in. Like, that was probably the tensest moment I've had. And part of me already knew, because she said to Kate Bishop, she's like, if I was going to kill you, and then Kate Bishop's like, yeah, you would have killed me right there. Like, I've seen this before, and so I get it. But even then, I'm like, yeah, but then wouldn't it be badass if she just kills her now, because she just set her up to say that, or Kate Bishop could sit there and say, well, what makes me think you're not going to kill me after you get the information you want out of me? I mean, but there was enough in that scene to where I'm like, wow, there is tension. There is something, real there. But I wish the series was more about those moments.
That's what I was saying.
Rather
is that
than
it should
like
be
whose
more
cameo is coming in.
It should be more Bourne Identity-like, and that's kind of what that moment was. And if the whole show was like that, it would just be riveting to me. So,
all right, what do you guys think? Are we watching this for the wrong reasons? Am I asking the wrong questions? Does any of this matter in the end, because you're not hosting a weekly pop culture podcast like we are, and we have to watch these things? Comment in the Facebook feed, comment in the YouTube feed. When we come back, we've got a Rogue file on one of the most influential artists of our time, Mr. George Perez, coming up next. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Just a quick shout out to RogueMatter.com. Making Markham number 3, the final chapter in the 3-issue series, is now available on RogueMatter.com. Go check it out. It's got like a John Wick Punisher kind of feel to it. It's grim and gritty. And like everything else on Rogue Matter, it is 100% free. RogueMatter.com. Go check it out. You can use our reader to read some cool comics. And again, all absolutely free to check out and enjoy, so check it out. All right. Another installment for us of a segment that we really like around here, which is called the Rogue Files, where we spotlight and highlight rogues in entertainment. It could be movies, it could be TV, it could be comics, and I can't think of a better rogue to talk about than the one-of-a-kind George Perez. Now, George Perez, last week, to give some context, we talked about it a little bit last week, announced that he had a terminal condition, which is terrible news. But like we kind of discussed off air, he's still with us, and he's decided to forego any kind of treatment to live life to the fullest, to go out there and live his best life, and embrace the fans one last time. And it's truly kind of just shows who he was as a creator and who he was as an artist. And how much he appreciated the fans, that he wants to go out and try to experience them before, whatever time he has left on the planet. So what better opportunity than to go look back at his career? He was retired because he had some other kind of medical issues. He had kind of gone blind in one eye, and he couldn't really draw anymore. So he was officially retired to this point. Let's look at his career, and I'll give you my entry point in a little bit, which is a little funny story as to where I enjoyed George Perez's artwork. But Darren, what was your entry point for George Perez?
Well, my entry point was basically my entry point into comics when I was maybe 12 or 10, somewhere around there in the 70s. First of all, George Perez is loved industry-wide by other creators and by fans. And even though he's loved, I still feel like he's underrated because a lot of the stuff that he did was extremely iconic and still sits in your mind as what the character should look like. It's like the baseline or the style guide version of all these characters that everyone else kind of riffs off of. Sort of started with the guys like Romita and Kirby, but George Perez is right in there. Some of the covers that he did, when I was that age, I just appreciated the characters. I knew that I loved the Avengers. I loved a lot of characters, but I didn't know names of creators. I didn't know who Jim Shooter was or any of these guys. So I just I started picking up these Avengers books because I liked the art, and I just thought that's what they should look like. And it turns out they were George Perez. So I want to show a couple of my favorite covers real quick. These Avengers covers. So Mike, tell me if I got it too high or too low or too far.
Go a little bit lower, and we're going to go, there we go.
So this is one, I think this is a really strong one. It's not as popular as some of the Crisis on Infinite Earths and some of those other ones, but these kind of covers are what started me out to George Perez. Here's another one. Is that good height? Everything?
Yeah.
One more. I have two more, so bear with me.
This is why we bring you on, just bring props.
Beautiful covers. This one everyone has seen, I'm guessing, but a lot of people might not know this was George. So this is George Perez, and then one last one. This is Contest of Champions. It's a wraparound cover, and the reason I brought this one was to show that George was known throughout the industry as being the guy to draw group shots, team shots, any cover that had generally, if he did a cover, it was going to have at least 3 people, sometimes up to 20 people, and maybe even more. Like just a crazy amount of people. If you had something like that you needed done, you got George, because that's what he did best. And a lot of guys just can't do that.
Yeah.
It's extremely difficult. But George just has magical layouts with large numbers of heroes, and Bob Layton, where I first started my career in Valiant in the early 90s, Bob Layton would tell stories about George like that if you gave him a cover and it only had one person on it, he'd be like, it's taking candy from a baby. This is easy. This is all you got. So yeah, it was. George is great. His stuff is influential, and it's been around for a while, and it's just really great stuff. And I have one more story. I used to run the crowd control at a lot of the Wizard World shows when Wizard World first started.
And was Hassan working security? I think so.
Yeah,
right?
Hassan, Buddy Scalera, my brother. Just it was great times. We really loved those shows, and after the shows we loved that too, you know. But I ran a line where George Perez was doing sketches for fans, and each sketch took him about 5 minutes, and there was a long line. We had to cap that line, but George was supposed to stay for an hour. He stayed for like 2 hours. And I had my sketchbook. I wanted him to do one for me, and he promised that he would before he even sat down. And when he was done, after staying an hour over, I could tell he was tired. But this was 20 years ago, so he was much younger. But he said, "Hey, give me that sketchbook. Let me do that sketch for you." And I told him he didn't have to, but he insisted, and I was happy to give it to him. And this is the sketch that he did for me. He did it in like 5 minutes, but it's better than anything that I could draw. And it's, you know, I still cherish it. I think it's a great. You could see all of his style points in there. The curls, the eyes, the lips. It's all classic George, and I think that's it's one of the best sketches I have. So.
What's interesting about him as well too is that he bookended 2 eras of Avengers. He was an Avengers artist in the 70s when they were a popular team, and then when he left the book, and maybe not coincidentally when he left the book, throughout the 80s, they were relegated to being like the B team, the C team, the D team. They were not, and again, Hassan and I talked about this last week, and I loved talking to the younger generations of fans who only grew up on the MCU and only grew up on Captain America and Iron Man, to know that in the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, they were laughable characters.
Iron Man was a B character.
Oh, easily.
Yeah, until I think Bob Layton took him over, and then it started picking up a little bit, but yeah.
No, but then he went right back down. I mean, I remember there were so many issues of Wizard where they were like, how are we going to fix, how would you fix the Avengers? How would you fix Captain America? Is Captain America even relevant anymore? Are any of these characters relevant? Because nothing but X-Men books sold in the 90s. So the cover that just flashed on screen, though, George Perez helped usher in the second wave of Avengers, because he was brought in, after Heroes Were Born, where they basically gave
the Image guys.
They gave all their books to Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld to resurrect these characters like Fantastic Four and Captain America and the Avengers, which basically, again, were I wouldn't even say they were B level. They were less than B level in terms of sales, in terms of respect.
Books that weren't selling.
Books that were just not good, and even they couldn't resurrect them. And then what it took was to bring back a legend onto the book in George Perez, bring in a classic writer in Kurt Busiek to kind of like bring them back in. So that was my first entry point into George Perez Avengers. But it was not my entry point into George Perez, though, which is a funny story that I think is funny. It might not be very funny, but the first George Perez book I ever bought was a creator-owned book called Saxon Violins. Does anybody, Hassan, do you know what Saxon Violins is, by any chance?
No.
I think I have that in my collection at home, but I can't promise you I've ever read it. So you can tell us what it is.
It was a creator-owned book from Peter David and George Perez, released through the Epic comic lines, which was Marvel's creator-owned division, which they barely ever did anything with. But they were able to release this book, and I was maybe 14 or 15 when I saw it in the Wizard store. Mind you, we're not talking about online. The actual Wizard World store,
The comic shop in
in
Nanuet.
Nanuet.
Yeah.
That helped spawn the book. That was my introduction to Wizard as well too. Was through that store, and able to actually pick up these. I looked at this book, and I look inside, and the artwork is beautiful. And there's boobies. I mean, it was just full on. It was like full on. Like you could. I'm 14 years old. I'm like, how am I not picking this? I thought I was getting away with something too, because like my dad's there.
You were,
you know.
Mike. You were.
I was right. I
Yeah.
was. And I'm like, well, this is amazing. And the funny part is though, years later, after getting over the fact that there was boobies in a comic book,
Right. He doesn't. You don't like boobies anymore. I'm taking it.
Oh no. Still a big fan. But as an up-and-coming artist, I was able to actually appreciate all of the energy that George Perez put onto a page. The line work, especially, just those little like loops, that kind of and that kind of accentuate where the shadow line ends. It's kind of like the mid-tone that he would do, and it would be like dark, and then like the little loops and things like that. And you can kind of see it in the sketch that you had there too, where you know. And to this day, in my own artwork, I still do that, and I still add those little accentuating points to it. And that was my first entry point. So by the time he took over for Avengers, I was like, well, that guy's great. But to see Saxon Violins was like a crime noir book. To have that much energy and excitement in that kind of story, just as much as if it is like Captain America punching through a wall.
Who wrote that one?
Peter David.
Peter David. Okay.
Yeah, it's a good book. Hassan, what was your entry point to George Perez?
It has to be the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and it's not because I was reading it. It was because my uncle was reading it. My uncle was just a crazy DC fanatic back in the day, and I was a little. I don't know if I was too young for comics, but I was definitely not interested in comics at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he had issue 7 of A Crisis on Infinite Earths with the Superman holding Supergirl's body. And he was freaked out about it, to the point where, when someone who's important to you thinks something is important, and you start to realize, okay, this must be important. So that's kind of what my introduction to him was. But of course, I didn't know that was George Perez then. And then as I got older and started reading, now the thing is about me, I read X-Men and New Mutants and X Factor, and I was in that wing. And there wasn't a lot of George Perez had done some work in that area, but that wasn't his premier, title that he worked on. So
I don't think he ever did work on an X-Men book, did he?
He's done imagery.
Yeah, he's done their characters.
Crossovers and stuff.
Yeah,
So that's as close as I.
Because they've been in Contest of Champions. I mean,
right.
So yeah.
But so. It was mostly the Marvel work that I read didn't feature a lot of George Perez stuff. So I would be gravitating back and forth between Marvel and DC, and that's where I would catch most of George Perez's run. And especially, like I said, when I got old enough and I read Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I understood finally when I was old enough the impact of issue 7 and the impact of the whole series in general,
Sure.
and that it's just a seminal piece of work. And as I started to become more and more mature in my artistry for myself, and realize the complex compositions that he was putting together, and he made it look absolutely effortless. That's it's like I said, I liken it to Byrne, where it's like he's not doing anything 90s flashy, but he's very much. He's very much making up the foundation of everything that everybody I know, every superstar that I grew up with, has been standing on,
right.
Since all the way back, back at the end of the 80s.
Right, like on par with Buscema and even Kirby, those kind of influential guys. He really did it effortlessly, and it shows if you just even look at the covers, much less the interiors. And Hassan, you said that one Infinite Crisis cover, I think you once called it the Mona Lisa of covers, where Superman holding the lifeless Supergirl. That's that's a classic cover, man. And he's also done. He hasn't just done like Avengers, even though he was the reason as a kid that I loved Avengers, and I loved them more than I liked X-Men, which was rare at the time. But he's also done a lot of Teen Titans covers. He's done a lot of Wonder Woman. He's had his fingers in a lot of different characters, and I think that his influence is everywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's what made it a no-brainer to do a Rogue Files on George Perez, because I can't think of someone who, paved the way for so many artists of today, who took a path in a way that if you're going to define a rogue artist, I mean, he's up there absolutely. So, all right, when we come back, we're going to try out a new segment. It's very exciting. It's called Whose Side Are You On? And it's tied into some chatter at C2E2 when we come back. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. Darren actually wants to do a different segment, and this one is going to be very, very exciting because it's called "Whose Signature Is This?" We were looking through your book, and what happened there?
Yeah, there's one guy who I met in passing, and I don't really remember who it was, but he told me he didn't have time to do a sketch, but he autographed my sketchbook anyway. But now I can't remember who it was, and I can't read his signature. So maybe you guys can help. So take a look at that.
LaClarence Hugh.
Yeah, good old LaClarence. Yeah, I mean, he's done some of my favorite stuff. So if anybody knows
LaToya
whose
Jackson
signature that
That's
is.
LaToya Jackson.
I'm not even trying.
So yeah, we'd love to hear from you if you know who that is. Okay,
All
thank you.
my best.
To Darren, all my best.
Yeah, all my best is I'm sure he got that one, right? I'm sure he got the all my best part.
Yeah.
Maybe also the Darren. I see it's
Hero.
moving out to you, Darren. It's too Darren.
Yeah.
Right.
All my best.
I'm helping.
This
I'm
guy.
helping.
Well, I'm sure it was a memorable experience.
All my best.
Yes.
This guy.
Well,
okay, see? We
a
solved it.
lot of times I would drop my sketchbook off in Artist Alley, and people would pass it around, and then I would just ask who had it last, and I'd find it at the end of the day.
Simpler times back then.
Yeah, much simpler. So it's possible that I don't even know who. I might not even know this person, but anyhow, I just would love to find out. If any of you guys can read that, let us know.
Well, please chime in because we want to. Next week we'll do your best guesses. We'll throw their best guesses on there as well too. All right. So a lot of debate at C2E2 this weekend. What I noticed about the show, and I was reading the recap on the Beat, Heidi McDonald's website, was that it seems as if there was not a lot of big time companies out there, which is totally understandable this year. With the rescheduling and the end of the year too. I mean, it's not like they have the budgets necessarily even to do the traveling. It seemed like it would have been a good opportunity to get into a panel or to get in, where you normally might not. C2E2 is normally one of the larger shows. It's probably number 5 on the list in my head, maybe 4 on the list in terms of like large shows that happen in the United States in terms of conventions. But interesting panels, though. I will say this: they definitely brought in a bunch of different creators, and one of the panels was talking about getting compensated for a work-for-hire project for the Big Two. So I thought, what a great way to kick off the Whose Side Are You On? Big Two versus the creators, work for hire. One of the panelists, and whose name escapes me at the moment.
It's probably LaClaren.
It was probably, yes, it was LaClaren. Who knew? Even said, they were just hoping for get my name spelled right in the credits of the movie if you're going to base the movie off of my work. Whereas others talked about, no, there should be some sort of compensation. So, Darren, in the big battle of Big Two versus the creators, work for hire, whose side are you on?
Well, I'm on the creator side generally because I consider myself a creator. But as an editor at Marvel, anytime I had a project going on, before somebody could start work, they had to sign a work for hire agreement, which basically says anything you create while working for us belongs to us. If you agree to this, then we'll pay you. If not, then we'll have to find someone else. So I think if you sign that, you don't really have a leg to stand on. And if you want to receive compensation for something that you created, then you should probably self-publish or go to an indie publisher who basically gives you, they have different deals, but you maintain some ownership.
Yeah.
That's my suggestion. Now, if you're someone who created things in the 70s or 80s, they may not have had those formal sheets that you signed. It was just kind of an unwritten understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I think you definitely should receive at least proper recognition, like Fabian Nicieza and Rob Liefeld did in the Deadpool movies. They did little plugs for them. They had streets named after them,
Yeah.
and I think Rob even had a cameo in the bar,
Right.
In the first one, maybe.
Yeah.
So there are ways you can give them compensation. Most artists and writers aren't looking for $1 million checks. They're just looking for acknowledgement. Like they just want to see their name in the credits, special thanks, something. And the fact that they get ignored, I have a problem with that, because it's free to put special thanks to whomever, Peter David, whoever it is. If you're using a storyline, especially if it's a storyline that, and I'm just using Peter David's name as because we just talked about him as an example. If it's a storyline that Peter David did, or Jim Shooter or whoever, it should say special thanks, Jim Shooter. If not paying them money, I don't know what the legalities of it are.
Well, there's a funny Jim Shooter story, actually, where he refused the money they were going to give him for using characters in some sort of DC Universe thing, because he said, no, I did it work for hire. And the lawyer's on the phone with him. He's like, no, just take the money.
Right.
And he's like, no, but I did this as a work for hire. Like, it's fine. He's like, just take the money. he had to be convinced.
Jim Shooter, a high principle guy. Wow.
Yeah.
That. He's been on the corporate side for so long that's how he sees it. You work for hire. You don't get the pay if they make a movie out of your character. So
Hassan, whose side are you on?
I don't know. I stray more to the side of ownership. I mean, I think ownership these days is under fire. I think a lot of people are co-opting a lot of intellectual property, and then crying foul when the owners, the proper owners of whatever property are, come calling, or want to control the licensing and the exploits of whatever property that is. Mostly, I would say that, yes, every artist should be paid and should be recognized for all the work that they do. Absolutely. And if they've helped pioneer work or change work in some way, that changed the dynamic of whatever that property was. And we have a million examples of that. We have Frank Miller on Daredevil. We've got 100,000 examples of of someone coming along, the right creator coming along and taking a property that's been misused or cast aside and elevating it to way above where they found it. And I do think that proper recognition should be paid those creators. But I think in the context of their tenacity and their ability to be creative, and their ability to breathe life into things that are otherwise quote unquote dead. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily think that they're deserving of co-ownership rights of whatever that property is. And the only reason I'm being austere like that is, like I said, like this, I think the younger generation doesn't understand property rights at all. Like they don't have any.
That's very true.
They don't have any knowledge of it.
Everything's free, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, you can just grab it and use it.
They claim that every use is something. They cling to fair use, which has a very limited scope to it.
YouTube has a big problem with that. Like reaction videos on Led Zeppelin songs or something like that. You can only play like a 4-second clip before they'll shut you down. They'll that sort of stuff. So
but the thing is, they monetize those. They're making money,
right,
off of
exactly.
that for the most part. So if for them to turn, if they said, look, I'm going to have to do this very briefly because they will copyright strike me. So I'm going to do this brief, but I'm going to pay respect to X, Y, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it vocally. I'm going to do it verbally.
Right. You try to do it the right way. If
yeah. But they approach it
right
as
way.
The dark overlords are going to come in and sweep in and take what I've worked my entire life to build up, it really isn't that. It really is just a matter of ownership rights. Like, you can't borrow someone's car without their permission and call it borrowing.
Right.
It is theft.
But if you sign a work for hire agreement, then you don't own it. So it's a little naive to take the argument that you do. I think if you have an A idea, if you have something unique, if you have a Harry Potter or Sin City or some sort of idea that is not with Marvel or DC, that if you get that job with Marvel or DC, you might want to think twice about giving them your A idea because they're going to own it.
I give artists that deal as well too. I sit there and say, look, here's your page rate. Great. I'm happy to meet your page rate. This is now work for hire, though. Everything you're doing is now work for hire. If you want, additional compensation in some sort of ownership, depending on how collaborative it is. Like when you and I created Mainstream with Tal and Tony, we just all said, look, we're going to split it because we're all friends and we all like working together.
And we were all genuinely chipping in ideas.
Exactly, right.
So,
but when it comes to just a simple like, hey, you're the artist on the book. I mean, I had an artist one time and he was behind on his deadlines and he's like, oh yeah, by the way, I want 8% of anything this thing makes. And I'm like, yeah, you got to make your deadlines first. And second of all, we had this conversation. I'm paying you your full page rate.
Right. For hire means I'm paying you to do the work. So if I'm not paying you, then yes, okay, I think we should negotiate some sort of ownership split. But I'm paying you, so that means that
deals like that are unfortunately not foolproof, because when you on the onset, anybody who's going to take a deal like that just wants to be working and just wants to be making some cash in their chosen field. But say it hits the stratosphere and it becomes an MCU show or something like that. Yeah, they're going to come back with their hands out saying that I had a substantial hand in getting you where you are.
Look, and so that's up to you on how you want to handle it. Maybe you want to be upstanding and give them a percentage if you think they did. But if you gave them character designs, you gave them a script, and they just were a pair of hands that did what you asked them to do. And basically, if they weren't there, you would have had somebody else, next man up, do it, and it essentially would have been the same story, the same everything. Then if they signed a work for hire agreement, there's no obligation to give them ownership.
The one concern with all this now is, as a reader, as readers and enjoy, people who enjoy comic books, we're never going to get, I feel like, we're going to get the same recycled stories now from Marvel and DC, because there's no incentive for a creator to come in and create something new for Marvel and DC unless they can somehow negotiate that they get some sort of ownership rights or co-ownership rights or royalty rights, that if it does go off and make a movie. Winter Soldier is a great example, and that was the big story, I think, that kind of spawned this panel in C2E2, where Ed Brubaker, kind of lamented he got more money for his 5-second cameo in Winter Soldier than he did for actually creating Winter Soldier. Now, mind you, he created Winter Soldier off of a previously created character.
Right. He reinvented Bucky, so I don't know if he created Winter Soldier. So,
but you can make an argument that he did, because it is almost an entirely brand new character with a brand new storyline, which they ended up spinning off into Sebastian Stan's character and making a fortune off of. But at the same time, it was Bucky. He was taking something that another creator had actually already created. I don't know if Jack Kirby was the one that killed Bucky off, or if it was Roy Thomas, or who actually killed him off. But so he was mining something that was already there. I think about people like Eric Larson too, who just regularly in his Spider-Man, his little micro Spider-Man runs, would create characters just left and right. And he actually talks about how he misses the days where creators would actually create new characters. But I just don't think there's any incentive to do it. And I think that we're the ones that are going to miss out, because now we're going to get the same old Magneto story.
Well,
the same old White
let me
Queen
just
story.
interject something else that you may not have considered, is that it's not the same. It's not done in the same way anymore. Unless your name is Bendis or somebody like that, you're not going to be given the freedom to create new characters. The editors The
That's
editors,
probably for the best.
the editors are getting stuff. Like, well, yeah, it is that the editors control the
Legally,
IP.
for ownership rights, it's probably for the best. I think you do, like you, Darren, you, Michael, as company owners. It's like the owners of Marvel and DC. I think you should compensate creators for any substantial contributions. All right, not that they change
Sure.
Wolverine's outfit from brown to yellow, but I mean some substantial contributions to what the franchise has become today. However, I don't think that those artists are entitled to that.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
if you look
you
at-
should morally do something for them because there are too many stories of too many creators dying in poverty,
Yeah.
or falling to medical ailments that they have to crowdfund for to be able to pay for their medical care.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's not enough there's not enough infrastructure in our chosen field to protect people when they get older and they start to retire. And I think that there should be a substantial contribution from the companies into something like that for creators, even freelance creators, because of the uniqueness of their circumstance.
Right.
But I also don't think that they're entitled to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
So
a
it's
tough one because
two minds to it.
you're not talking about the NFL or NBA where you have cases like that as well, but those guys are dealing in millions of dollars and tens of millions of dollars, where it's easy enough to set up something if you can figure it out. You can set something up. But when you're talking about comic artists, we're talking about pennies to dollars here, or pennies to hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Isn't it also like the choice of the individual to get into this business? I mean, one of the reasons that I feel that I don't do as many comics as I would want to was that I just didn't think there was any money in it. And I don't mean that in a greedy way. I mean,
Right,
like literally,
right.
I cannot pay my mortgage.
Right, I can't afford to be working on comics all day if I know this is going to sell 3,000 copies at best,
Right.
and it's going to cost me about 8,000
Right.
to make.
Right.
So-
It was a money losing endeavor for many years until Kickstarter came around, where now you can actually make money, thankfully. As a real small business. But prior to that, it was a lot of like, all right, well, if I want to do comics for a living, I've either got to make it big. I got to be George Perez, or I've got to be Brian Bendis, or whatever the case
Yeah.
might be, or bust. There really is no in between, and I think it's also up to the individual creator. Like you said, Hassan, no one's entitled to get to do what they want. I think that seems to
Yeah.
be a pervasive
Right,
attitude.
Right, you got to make it happen.
Yeah.
Look at Walking Dead. Something
Kirkman,
like Kirkman is he's smart how he worked that out, and he has other IP that he's working on too. He didn't do that for Marvel or for DC.
Yeah.
He did it in a way that he could own it, and it really worked out for him. And so a lot of independent guys are trying to figure out how to do something like Walking Dead,
Yeah.
and to capitalize off of it. There's a lot of great ideas out there. It's the execution, the financing, and then the talent to be able to pitch it and sell it. There's a lot of different talents involved with getting as far as he got. So
Yeah. That is our show for tonight. I want to thank Darren for joining us. I feel like you were here twice today somehow. We're doing the time warp.
it's like the Undone.
Yeah, just keep getting keep
Deja
rewinding.
vu all over again.
Deja vu all over again. But we thank you for joining us. Next week's our Spider-Man week. I have done a nice job of avoiding spoilers and reviews. They're out. We will not talk about any of them because we will go see them. Hassan, when are you seeing? Have you got your tickets yet, Hassan?
I'm not telling anybody when I'm going to go see it. 'Cause
Oh,
I don't want to be tracked down. And
Yeah,
hunted
smart.
down and killed. But
No, he has a
yeah,
rabid fan base. You don't understand.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
They adore me so much they want me dead. I think it's safe to say within the next 4 days I will be seeing Spider-Man.
All right.
Well,
we will
I can give you one non-spoiler. I don't know how much time we have, but someone I know saw it, and he said, "You'll laugh, you'll cry, you'll cheer. It's great." That's what he said.
Oh, now it's spoiled. Now it's ruined.
Oh, man.
Now I know it's great.
Is
Great.
Mephisto in it? Is Mephisto behind it?
Right, right.
We will see you guys next week.
Hoorah.
Rogue Wave. Hi guys, Mike Dolce here from the Rogue Wave podcast. If you like this video, please feel free to like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It really helps us out. Leave a comment, let us know what you'd like to see in future episodes, and tune in every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern for a brand new episode of the Rogue Wave podcast.